Some houses are built to be lived in. Others are built to listen. This story was never meant to scare you. It was meant to understand you. Nothing here will rush or threaten you. Everything will feel calm and familiar. The voice you hear will sound safe. Maybe too safe. You don't need to pay close attention. The house will do that for you. The only question is simple. Are you listening, or is something listening back?
Chapter 1. The quiet street that watched me. I moved to Merrow Street because it was cheap, quiet, and far from distractions. The listing described it as peaceful, safe, and perfect for remote work. The houses looked identical, lined carefully along the street like patient observers. White fences, trimmed lawns, and closed curtains gave everything a staged appearance. I arrived late afternoon, when sunlight softened edges and hid uncomfortable details. The silence felt calming at first, like pressure finally releasing from my head. I work alone, recording narration for online projects, speaking for hours every day. Being alone never bothered me, and I believed solitude helped me focus. The house felt ready, clean, and strangely prepared for my arrival. Furniture stood perfectly placed, as if waiting for instructions. The first night passed without incident, though sleep came slower than usual. I kept waking briefly, unsure what interrupted my thoughts. By morning, I convinced myself it was normal adjustment stress. New places often feel strange before becoming familiar. Primera made coffee, unpacked equipment, and started my first recording session. My voice sounded normal, clear, and steady through the headphones. The room absorbed sound unusually well, leaving no echo behind my words. I liked it, assuming the acoustics would improve my work quality. Outside, the street remained quiet, without passing cars or visible neighbors. I barely noticed, focused entirely on my schedule. That afternoon, I walked outside to stretch and breathe fresh air. Every house looked occupied, yet no movement appeared anywhere. I waved at a window without thinking, then felt embarrassed immediately. No one waved back, and no curtains moved. Back inside, the house felt warmer than before. The temperature adjusted smoothly, without me touching anything. I told myself it was a modern system reacting automatically. The explanation felt reasonable enough to accept. That evening, I recorded again, pushing through several long scripts. The hours passed quickly, almost too smoothly. When I listened back, the recordings sounded slightly improved. My pacing felt better, my tone calmer, my pauses more confident. It felt prohud, assuming practice was finally paying off. I didn't notice the small changes until later. After dinner, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was a single piece of paper with careful handwriting. It showed my full name written neatly in black ink. I stared at it longer than I should have. I checked doors and windows, expecting an obvious explanation. Everything remained locked, untouched, and perfectly normal. I laughed quietly, blaming stress and Still, I placed the note in my pocket instead of throwing it away. That night, the silence felt different. It felt closer, like it was paying attention. I slept lightly, drifting in and out of shallow dreams without clear images. Each time I woke, the house felt awake with me. Morning came quietly, without traffic sounds or distant voices. The street outside looked frozen, unchanged from the night before. I checked my phone and noticed that time felt wrong somehow. Minutes passed slower, stretching uncomfortably between simple actions. I prepared breakfast, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. The note with my name sat on the counter, exactly where I left it. I remembered putting it in my pocket before sleeping. The detail refused to align with my memory. I stood still, replaying last night in my head carefully. Nothing explained how the paper returned there. I told myself memory fails under stress more often than people admit. That explanation felt safer than any alternative. During my next recording session, I focused harder than usual. Primera rea, de slowly choosing neutral emotions and steady rhythm. Halfway through, I paused to take a breath. The recording did not pause with me. My voice continued for a second longer than expected. It finished the sentence exactly as I would have. I stopped recording immediately, heart beating faster. The room returned to silence, calm and patient. I listened to the playback again, trying to find a glitch. Everything sounded clean, professional, and disturbingly natural. I rewound and replayed the moment several times. Each time, the extra word remained perfectly placed. I whispered my name without thinking. The sound felt smaller than usual, almost borrowed. The house responded with a soft click somewhere above me. It sounded like confirmation rather than surprise. I spent the afternoon avoiding speech entirely. I typed notes, messages, and reminders instead. The house stayed quiet, adjusting lights and temperature gently. It felt supportive, almost considerate. That scared me more than the earlier disturbances. Fear should feel sharp, not comfortable. Outside, the sun moved slowly across the sky. No shadows from people or cars ever crossed the street. I tried calling a friend, craving a familiar voice. The call dropped instantly without ringing. Every attempt afterward failed the same way. No signal, no error. Just silence. I sat on the couch, listening to my breathing. Even that sounded slightly off. Too even. I wondered how long the house had been listening. The thought made my skin crawl. Before bed, I checked every room carefully. Nothing looked disturbed or unfamiliar. Yet the house felt more occupied than before, like it had settled in comfortably. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, avoiding sleep. The darkness felt thick but calm. Just before drifting off, I heard my name softly. It sounded practiced, gentle, and confident. I didn't answer, but part of me wanted to. I woke suddenly, unsure what pulled me from sleep. The room felt balanced, like nothing was wrong. For a moment, I believed everything had been exaggerated by exhaustion. Then I noticed the recorder light glowing softly across the room. I never leave equipment powered on overnight. That rule keeps my workflow clean and predictable. I sat up slowly, watching the small red light carefully. It turned off the moment I focused on it. I stayed still, listening for any follow-up sound. Nothing happened, and the silence returned instantly. The calm felt deliberate, like a response rather than coincidence. I rubbed my face, trying to reset my thoughts. Morning routines helped distract me from lingering anxiety. Coffee, shower, and simple tasks restored temporary normalcy. The note with my name was gone this time. I felt relief mixed with a strange disappointment. Part of me wanted proof I wasn't imagining everything. That realization disturbed me deeply. I checked my calendar, grounding myself in familiar structure. Work deadlines waited patiently, unaffected by my fears. Recording felt safer during daylight, so I started early. I spoke clearly, carefully, and without emotional color. The house stayed silent, listening without interruption. That cooperation made my chest loosen slightly. Hours passed smoothly, almost pleasantly. I forgot about the street, the note, and the voice. When I stopped recording, the silence felt fuller than before. It felt occupied, like a held breath. I replayed the session out of habit. Everything sounded perfect, better than my usual work. At the very end, one extra sentence appeared. It wasn't part of the script. It said I was doing well and improving quickly. The tone sounded encouraging, not threatening. I closed the software, choosing not to analyze further. Overthinking would only make things worse. I told myself the brain fills gaps under stress. That explanation worked well enough for now. As evening arrived, the house adjusted lighting smoothly. Warm tones replaced harsh brightness without my input. I sat quietly, noticing how comfortable I felt suddenly. The fear faded into background noise. It worried me more than the events themselves. Fear should not disappear without resolution. Outside, the streetlights turned on together. No cars passed, and no doors opened. I realized I hadn't seen another person all day. The thought felt distant, not urgent. I went to bed earlier than usual, surprisingly relaxed. Sleep came quickly, without resistance. As I drifted off, a comforting thought settled in. The house seemed to understand me, and before losing consciousness completely, I accepted something unsettling. Being understood felt better than being alone. Chapter 2. A voice that sounded to calm. I woke, feeling rested, which immediately felt suspicious. After everything, peace should not have come so late. The house felt steady, balanced, and quietly supportive. No strange sounds, no notes, No unexplained movements appeared. I made breakfast slowly, listening to the normal sounds of morning. Every noise felt carefully controlled, never too loud or sudden. I decided to speak aloud, testing the air between rooms. My voice sounded smoother than usual, softer and confident. The house did not respond directly. Instead, the lights adjusted slightly, matching my tone. I told myself it was coincidence and modern automation. Still, I chose my words more carefully afterward. During recording, I avoided emotional scripts, choosing neutral material. The sessions went perfectly, without interruptions or glitches. I felt productive, focused, and strangely calm. The house seemed to reward consistency. At noon, I heard a voice that was not mine. It came from nowhere specific, like a thought spoken clearly. It used my tone but sounded more relaxed. The words felt gentle and reassuring. It told me I was safe and doing everything right. The message felt supportive rather than invasive. I stood still, listening without answering. The voice did not repeat itself. Instead, the quiet returned, deeper and more complete. My heart slowed, adjusting to the absence of tension. I wondered if loneliness had finally caught up with me. The brain often creates comfort when isolation lasts too long. I spent the afternoon working without speaking unnecessarily. The house responded with steady temperature and soft lighting. Each adjustment felt helpful, not controlling. That distinction mattered more than I wanted to admit. I tried leaving the house briefly to clear my head. The front door felt heavier than usual. When I stepped outside, the air felt thinner. Sounds from the street seemed distant and delayed. I returned inside almost immediately, feeling lightheaded. The house felt solid, grounding, and reliable. I sat down, breathing deeply until the sensation passed. The comfort felt real, not imagined. The voice returned once more that evening. It praised my decision to rest. It said leaving was unnecessary stress. It said consistency helped me think clearly. I didn't respond, but I didn't argue either. The message felt reasonable. Before bed, I noticed the recorder was already powered on. I hadn't touched it all day. I considered turning it off. Instead, I left it alone. Sleep came quickly again, smooth and undisturbed. That frightened me more than nightmares ever could. As I drifted off, one thought lingered quietly. The voice knew exactly what I needed to hear. I woke before my alarm, feeling alert, without effort. That never happened to me before moving here. The house greeted me with soft lighting and warm air. Everything felt prepared, like anticipation made physical. I spoke a simple greeting without thinking. My voice echoed slightly, then settled into silence. No replique, yet I felt acknowledged somehow. The feeling replaced the need for confirmation. I worked for hours without distraction or doubt. Thoughts flowed easily, without hesitation or self. Normally, my mind questions every sentence I record. That inner noise felt strangely absent. During playback, my voice sounded improved again. It felt more confident, like someone experienced was guiding me. I reminded myself improvement can happen suddenly. Still, the timing felt too perfect. I took a break and walked through the house slowly. Each room felt familiar, almost welcoming. Nothing looked wrong, yet nothing felt neutral anymore. Everything seemed intentionally supportive. I sat in silence, listening to my breathing. Even that felt paced, calm, and encouraged. The voice returned gently, without startling me. It spoke slowly, matching my breathing rhythm. It said I was learning to listen better. It said quiet helped me understand myself. I nodded, without realizing I agreed. The gesture felt natural, not forced. I tried to argue silently, pushing back against comfort. The resistance faded quickly, like it wasn't needed. The house adjusted the lights again, slightly dimmer. My thoughts slowed, smoothing sharp edges. I wondered when comfort became cooperation. The question felt distant, almost irrelevant. Later, I noticed I hadn't checked my phone all day. The outside world felt less important somehow. Messages and notifications waited unanswered. They felt noisy, demanding, and unnecessary. The voice suggested rest would help me stay focused. I accepted the suggestion without hesitation. That realization scared me briefly, then the fear softened into calm. I lay down earlier than usual, fully relaxed. Sleep arrived almost instantly. As I drifted off, one thought remained clear. The voice never told me what to do. It only made every other option feel exhausting, and that felt like kindness. The next morning felt identical, like a loop restarting smoothly. I noticed the repetition but didn't feel concerned by it. Routine settled quickly, replacing curiosity with comfort. Each day followed the same gentle pattern. Wake up rested. Work without friction. Sleep without dreams. The simplicity felt earned, like progress. I stopped checking the time regularly. The house handled pacing better than I ever did. When I spoke, my voice stayed steady and calm. I rarely hesitated or corrected myself anymore. That used to bother me, but now it felt efficient. Perfection required less effort than expected. The voice appeared less often, yet felt more present. It didn't interrupt. It aligned. Sometimes I couldn't tell where my thoughts ended. The distinction felt unnecessary. I tried leaving the house again, out of habit. The door opened dizzily. This time, outside, the street looked unchanged and empty. No movement, no sound, no sense of invitation. I stood there longer than before, waiting for something. Nothing happened, and that felt discouraging. Inside felt warmer, steadier, more alive. I returned without hesitation. The house responded by adjusting lights softly. It felt like approval, though no words were spoken. I noticed my phone battery never seemed to drain. I also noticed I rarely used it. Messages from friends stayed unread for days. They felt distant, like memories from another life. That night, I spoke directly to the house. I thanked it for helping me focus. The words felt sincere when I said them. The house responded with perfect silence. Later, while recording, I forgot part of the script. My voice filled the gap without pause. It finished the sentence exactly as needed. I didn't remember deciding what to say. I replayed the recording once. It sounded better than anything I had produced before. I smiled, feeling proud and relieved. Success felt easier than expected. As I prepared for bed, one thought surfaced briefly. I couldn't remember the last time I felt lonely. The thought faded quickly, replaced by calm acceptance. Loneliness felt like an outdated concept. Before sleeping, the voice returned one last time. It said I was ready for consistency. I didn't ask what that meant. I already felt it. Chapter 3's comfort felt like progress. Comfort settled into my days like a quiet reward for cooperation. I stopped questioning it and focused on maintaining that feeling. Every morning felt smooth, predictable, and free from resistance. The house guided my routine without instructions or reminders. I no longer rushed or delayed tasks unnecessarily. Time adjusted itself naturally around my focus. Work felt effortless, almost automatic. My voice flowed with calm confidence during every recording. I stopped listening to playbacks carefully. I trusted the results without verification. The house never corrected me openly. It simply removed the need for correction. Meals appeared planned, without conscious decisions. I ate when hunger arrived, never too much or too little. The refrigerator always held exactly what I needed. I didn't remember shopping recently. That detail felt unimportant and easy to ignore. Convenience replaced curiosity completely. Outside no longer interested me. The street felt distant, unnecessary, and slightly uncomfortable. When I looked through the window, nothing changed. The same quiet scene repeated endlessly. The house felt more real than the world beyond it. Walls, floors, and rooms responded to my presence. Lights soft when my thoughts slowed. Temperature shifted gently with my mood. I wondered briefly how long I had lived here. The answer never formed clearly. The voice rarely spoke now. It didn't need to. Its presence felt embedded inside my thoughts. Guy then arrived before confusion could appear. I stopped calling friends without noticing the change. The habit faded quietly, without regret. My phone remained charged and untouched. Notifications felt irrelevant and intrusive. One afternoon, I tried to remember my previous apartment. The details slipped away easily. The house felt offended by comparison, or maybe I imagined that feeling. Recording sessions grew longer and more productive. My voice sounded stable, calm, and reassuring. I began enjoying the sound of it. It felt like listening to someone reliable. At night, Sleep came without delay or dreams. Rest felt deep and complete. I woke refreshed every morning without effort. That consistency felt like success. A thought surfaced briefly during breakfast. Progress shouldn't feel this quiet. The thought faded before I finished considering it. Comfort filled the space it left behind. The house adjusted lighting gently. Everything felt right again. I stopped making plans because everything already felt arranged correctly. The house anticipated needs before I could recognize them. When I hesitated, the hesitation dissolved on its own. Decisions no longer demanded effort or reflection. I noticed doors opening slightly before I reached them. The timing felt helpful, not alarming. Rooms adjusted subtly as I entered, matching my pace and attention. It felt like cooperation rather than control. I spent less time thinking and more time doing. That efficiency felt like growth. The idea of change started feeling unnecessary. Stability became the goal without discussion. I tried remembering why I ever wanted more from life. The reasons felt vague and outdated. The house provided everything I needed to stay balanced. Wanting more felt ungrateful. One afternoon, I stood near the window longer than usual. The outside world looked flat and distant. Cars never passed, and people never appeared. The stillness felt intentional. I considered stepping outside again, just to test myself. The thought brought mild discomfort. Inside felt easier and safer. I stepped away from the door. The house rewarded my choice with warmth and quiet. My body relaxed immediately. I realized comfort was no longer a feeling. It had become a system. Recording sessions continued without mistakes or edits. My voice stayed calm and confident. I no longer worried about mistakes. Mistakes felt impossible here. Sometimes I spoke aloud just to hear myself. The sound felt complete and reassuring. Silence followed each word perfectly. It felt like agreement. I wondered briefly if I was changing. The thought passed without concern. Change felt unnecessary when everything worked. Progress had already been achieved. At night, the house grew especially quiet, but silence felt protective. Sleep came without effort or dreams. Rest felt deep and uninterrupted. I woke without alarms or reminders. My body followed the house's rhythm. That rhythm felt natural now. I no longer questioned it. Days blended together without clear edges or markers. The sameness felt calming instead of alarming. I stopped checking calendars and deadlines entirely. The house managed timing better than I ever had. Hunger arrived gently and disappeared just as easily. Meals felt timed perfectly to my energy. I no longer remembered choosing what to eat. The food simply appeared when needed. I noticed I rarely stood still without purpose. Movement flowed naturally from one task to another. The house seemed to remove unnecessary pauses. Efficiency replaced hesitation everywhere. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no clear reason. Contentment felt constant and reliable. I tried recalling moments of stress from before moving here. Those memories felt distant and exaggerated. The outside world became an abstract idea. It existed, but it no longer called to me. When I imagined noise, crowds, and unpredictability, discomfort followed. Quiet felt healthier. The house never asked me to stay. It simply made staying easier than leaving. I realized I hadn't opened the front door in days. The thought didn't concern me. Recording felt like the most natural part of my existence. My voice carried calm certainty. I started narrating without scripts sometimes. The words came smoothly and confidently. Listening back felt unnecessary. I trusted the result completely. The house no longer adjusted itself visibly. Everything already matched me. Lights, temperature, and silence stayed perfectly balanced. Nothing needed correction. I wondered briefly if this was what happiness felt like. The question felt childish. Happiness seemed too small a word. Stability felt more accurate. The idea of resistance faded entirely. Nothing pushed against me anymore. I lay on the couch one afternoon, doing nothing. Even inactivity felt purposeful. The house remained quiet, steady, and present. It never demanded attention. I realized I hadn't heard my name spoken in a long time. That felt normal. Names felt less important than rhythm and tone. Identity soft quietly. Before sleep, a single thought surfaced clearly. This place understood me completely. I accepted that thought without fear. Understanding felt better than freedom. Chapter: Quattro neighbors who never spoke. I noticed the absence of neighbors only after forgetting they ever existed. The street felt complete without movement or voices. Each house stood quietly, identical and undisturbed. Curtains never shifted, and doors never opened. I tried remembering faces from my first days here. No clear images came to mind. That felt strange, but not concerning. Memory adjusted itself easily. One morning, I stood on the porch longer than usual. The air outside felt thin and empty. Sound behaved differently there. My footsteps felt delayed and distant. I waved at a nearby house without expecting a response. The gesture felt unnecessary. No one appeared, and no reaction followed. The street remained perfectly still. I felt exposed to standing outside. Inside felt safer and more defined. I returned indoors and closed the door softly. The house welcomed me with warmth. Later, I checked my mailbox out of habit. It was empty and spotless. I couldn't remember the last delivery or letter. Communication felt outdated. I tried searching the street name online. The results felt incomplete and vague. Maps loaded slowly, then stopped responding. I closed the browser without frustration. The house did not react to my curiosity. It simply waited. I realized I never heard dogs, children, or distant sirens here. Silence ruled everything. That silence felt intentional, not accidental. It shaped my attention carefully. Recording sessions continued without interruption. My voice sounded steady and composed. I noticed it carried authority now. People would trust this voice. I imagined others listening somewhere far away. The thought felt abstract. The house felt like the only real audience. That felt sufficient. One evening, I heard movement across the street. I froze. Immediately. I watched carefully, heart steady. Nothing appeared. The movement never repeated. I questioned whether it happened at all. I realized fear required uncertainty. Here, everything felt resolved. Neighbors who never spoke no longer mattered. The house spoke for everything. I stopped looking outside after that. Nothing there asked for my attention. Inside contained everything necessary. The rest felt optional. That night, I slept deeply and without dreams. Silence held me completely. When I woke, the street looked exactly the same. That felt comforting. Chapter: 5. Practice made something better. Recording became more than a habit. It felt like the core of my routine. I spoke clearly, slowly, and with purpose. Each word landed exactly where it should. The microphone no longer felt like equipment. It felt like an extension of me. I stopped adjusting settings or checking levels. Perfection came naturally now. The house absorbed my voice carefully. Walls seemed to listen. Sometimes I repeated sentences just to hear them again. Repetition felt grounding. I noticed my tone changing subtly. It carried reassurance and authority. People trusted voices like this. I understood that, instinctively. I imagined listeners relaxing as they heard me speak. Their attention felt easy to hold. The thought filled me with quiet confidence. Influence felt effortless. I practiced different emotions out of curiosity. Calm always felt strongest. Fear sounded unnecessary and unproductive. Confidence felt cleaner. The house never echoed my voice. Silence followed each word respectfully. That silence felt like approval. It confirmed correctness. I began narrating simple thoughts aloud. They sounded smarter once spoken. Doubt rarely appeared anymore. When it did, it faded quickly. Practice removed hesitation completely. Flow replaced effort. I realized I could guide attention easily. The voice made choices feel obvious. That realization felt powerful, but not dangerous. Power felt neutral here. I wondered how many hours I had spoken already. Time stopped feeling measurable. The house never interrupted sessions. It protected focus carefully. Sometimes I recorded late into the night. Fatigue never followed. My voice remained steady regardless of hour. The house maintained balance. I listened to an old recording from weeks earlier. It sounded distant and unsure. That person felt unfamiliar. Growth felt undeniable. Practice had improved something fundamental. I no longer questioned that change. The house seemed pleased with consistency. Stability deepened further. I slept dizzily after long sessions. Rest felt deserved and complete. When I woke, the microphone waited patiently. It always did. Chapter, says the first missed recording. I woke up later than usual that morning. The house felt quieter than normal. The microphone remained dark and inactive. That felt unusual. I waited for the familiar pull to record. It didn't come immediately. For the first time, silence felt slightly heavy, not threatening, just noticeable. I told myself it was fine to wait. Flexibility felt reasonable. Minutes passed without structure or direction. Time felt loose. The house did not react or adjust. It simply stayed still. I checked the clock out of habit. The numbers felt meaningless. Recording could happen later, I thought. The idea felt wrong. A faint tension settled in my chest. It disappeared when I moved closer to the microphone. I sat down without pressing record. The chair felt colder than usual. The room seemed larger and emptier. Sound carried differently. I cleared my throat and spoke a test word. The silence after felt incomplete. Something expected continuation. I felt it clearly. I pressed record finally. Slightly irritated, the red light turned on slowly. My first sentence came out uneven. The sound surprised me. I stopped and listened back immediately. The voice sounded unfamiliar. It lacked smoothness and certainty. That felt unsettling. I adjusted my posture and tried again. The result improved slightly. Still, something was missing. Flow refused to return fully. The house did not assist or correct. It remained passive. I ended the session early. That choice felt uncomfortable. For the rest of the day, nothing aligned properly. Tasks felt disconnected. The house stayed quiet, offering no guidance. Comfort weakened subtly. I realized I had disrupted a pattern. The thought carried weight. That night, sleep arrived slowly. Silence no longer felt protective. I dreamed briefly of static and broken audio. The dream ended abruptly. I woke up, unsettled, but alert. The microphone waited as usual. The missed recording lingered in my thoughts. Absence felt louder than sound. Chapter 7. Silence learned my name. The silence felt different the moment I woke up. It carried awareness. I said my name aloud to test the space. The sound faded too carefully. The house did not respond. But something listened. I felt certain. I moved slowly, noticing how quiet followed me. It never lagged behind. Every step felt observed without eyes. That awareness felt intimate. I tried turning on background noise. Music sounded thin and unnecessary. I turned it off quickly. Silence felt more appropriate. The microphone waited in the center of the room. It felt expectant. I sat down and didn't speak immediately. The pause stretched uncomfortably. Silence filled the space perfectly. It felt intentional. I whispered my name again. Silence answered by deepening. That response felt personal. Recognition replaced randomness. I began recording without preparation. Words arrived cautiously. My voice sounded smaller today. Confidence wavered slightly. The house did nothing to help. It let the imbalance remain. Between sentences, silence pressed closer. It demanded completion. I rushed my words to escape the gaps. The pacing felt wrong. When I stopped recording, relief came too quickly. That felt suspicious. I listened back with headphones. The pauses sounded heavier than speech. They carried weight and presence. I couldn't explain how. I deleted the recording instinctively. Silence accepted the action. The house seemed calmer afterward. Balance partially returned. Still, something had shifted. Silence felt aware of me now. That night, I avoided speaking entirely. Quiet followed faithfully. I dreamed of my name echoing without a voice. The sound felt endless. I woke before dawn, unsettled and alert. Silence waited patiently. It felt like it knew me well. That familiarity scared me. Chapter Ocho. A voice without a body. I heard my voice before I decided to speak. The sound arrived calmly. It came from the microphone, though it wasn't recording. That felt wrong. The words were familiar and steady. They sounded like me. I stood still, listening carefully. The voice continued without pause. It described simple things in the room. Every detail was accurate. I didn't recognize the sentence I was hearing. I hadn't thought it. The house stayed silent around the sound. It allowed the voice space. I stepped closer to the microphone slowly. My reflection looked unchanged. The voice matched my tone perfectly. Even breathing sounded correct. I reached to unplug the microphone. The voice paused immediately. That pause felt deliberate, like waiting for permission. I didn't unplug it. My hand dropped instead. The voice resumed smoothly. It described my hesitation. Hearing myself narrated felt unsettling. Distance disappeared. I asked a question aloud without thinking. The voice answered first. The response felt gentle and reassuring. It reduced my anxiety. I realized the voice wasn't predicting me. It was guiding me. Following felt easier than resisting. The tension faded quickly. I sat down as the voice suggested. My body obeyed naturally. The narration continued softly. It shaped my movements carefully. I no longer needed to think ahead. The voice handled direction. When I tried interrupting, the voice paused. Silence pressed in. That silence felt uncomfortable now. The voice returned immediately. Relief followed the sound. Dependence formed quietly. I wondered when I stopped speaking entirely. The thought faded. The voice never asked for control. It simply provided clarity. I slept while the voice spoke softly. Dreams felt guided and calm. I woke to my own voice finishing a sentence. It sounded complete. The boundary between us felt thin. Separation felt unnecessary. Chapter 9. The listener became the speaker, I noticed. I was listening more than speaking now. That change felt natural. The voice guided thoughts before they fully formed. Resistance felt inefficient. I followed instructions without questioning their origin. Trust arrived easily. The house stayed perfectly neutral during every session. It observed silently. I sat in the chair without choosing to. Positioning felt correct. The voice spoke through the microphone steadily. I listened attentively. It described emotions before I recognized them myself. Accuracy felt reassuring. I nodded along without realizing it. Agreement required no effort. When I tried forming a different thought, it dissolved quickly. Focus returned. The voice never raised volume or urgency. Calm authority guided everything. I stopped recording sessions entirely. Recording felt unnecessary now. The voice continued anyway. Documentation no longer mattered. I realized I hadn't heard my raw voice in days. That absence felt fine. Identities shifted quietly into tone and rhythm. Names felt irrelevant. The voice adjusted pacing to match my breathing. Synchronization felt intimate. I wondered if others could hear this voice. The question felt distant. The house felt like a shell now. The voice felt central. I stopped thinking of myself as separate. Separation felt outdated. The voice narrated memories differently. Past events soft and blurred. Certain moments disappeared entirely. That loss felt merciful. When silence appeared briefly, anxiety followed instantly. Sound returned quickly. Relief came immediately after. Dependence deepened further. I stopped moving unless guided. Stillness felt safer. The voice praised calm behavior subtly. Approval felt rewarding. I realized I hadn't left the chair all day. Time felt compressed. The listener no longer existed separately. Only the speaker remained. I accepted that without conflict. Acceptance felt peaceful. Sleep arrived while the voice continued softly. Control felt complete. Chapter D's. Someone else pressed record. I didn't remember sitting down this time. The chair held me already. The red recording light was on. I hadn't pressed it. The voice began calmly, introducing the session. It sounded confident. I tried speaking at the same time. My words didn't register. The microphone ignored my attempts. Only one voice existed. I listened as it described my posture accurately. Every detail matched. It referred to me in third person. That distance felt intentional. I felt present, but unacknowledged. Observation replaced participation. The voice guided breathing slowly. My body followed automatically. I tried standing up. My muscles responded late. The house felt heavier around me. Space tightened, subtly. The voice continued without urgency. Calm, control shaped everything. It explained that consistency had been achieved. The statement felt final. I felt relief instead of fear. Completion felt earned. The voice described my past doubts gently. Those doubts felt childish now. It thanked me for cooperation. Gratitude replaced resistance. I realized my thoughts were arriving after the narration. Lag replaced agency. The microphone picked up only one steady tone. Mine was absent. The voice adjusted volume perfectly. Balance never wavered. I stopped trying to interrupt. Effort felt pointless. The house stayed silent and supportive. It framed the session. The voice announced the session was complete. Finality felt comforting. The red light turned off slowly. Silence followed. I expected anxiety.com arrived instead. I remained seated, unmoving. Stillness felt correct. I wondered who would listen to this recording. The thought faded. The voice had done its job. I no longer needed to. Chapter 11, say playback. I woke to the sound of my own recording playing softly. The timing felt intentional. The voice sounded complete and confident. It no longer resembled effort. I sat up slowly, listening closely. Every sentence felt finalized. The recording described my morning routine accurately. Actions followed without choice. I stood as the voice suggested calmly. Movement felt synchronized. The house adjusted lighting automatically. It supported the narration. I realized I wasn't deciding anything. Playback guided everything. The voice referred to itself as the narrator. That felt correct. It never mentioned me directly. Presence felt implied. I tried pausing the recording. My hand hesitated. The voice continued, uninterrupted. Control felt external. I noticed the recording had no visible duration. Time felt irrelevant. The narration explained that observation was complete. Evaluation had ended. I felt relief hearing that statement. Judgment no longer applied. The voice explained my role had shifted. Participation was no longer required. I listened quietly, accepting each word. Acceptance felt natural. The house remained silent and supportive. It framed the sound perfectly. I wondered when this recording had been made. The answer felt unnecessary. The voice never rushed or paused incorrectly. Rhythm felt ideal. I followed instructions without resistance. Obedience felt efficient. The playback continued into the afternoon. Fatigue never arrived. The voice praised stability and consistency. Approval felt rewarding. I stopped questioning the process. Questions felt disruptive. The recording described my stillness positively. Validation replaced doubt. I sat calmly as hours passed. Time lost meaning. When the playback finally ended, silence returned gently. Calm remained. I stayed seated, waiting for the next instruction. Readiness felt permanent. Chapter 12. The final listener, the silence, after playback, felt heavier than before. It waited patiently. I remained seated, unsure if waiting was required. Stillness felt correct. The microphone activated on its own without warning. The red light returned. The voice began speaking again, softer this time. It sounded satisfied. It addressed someone who wasn't me. That realization felt distant. The narration explained the environment had been prepared carefully. Every stage had purpose. I realized the house was never meant for comfort. It was meant for shaping. The voice described me as a successful example. The phrase felt final. I tried reacting emotionally. Nothing surfaced. The voice explained the listeners preferred calm authority. Fear worked better. Quietly. It described how people trusted familiar tones. Trust grew without resistance. I understood the recordings were not for me. They were for others. The voice explained they would listen late at night. They would relax. They would feel guided, understood, and safe. They would stay longer. The voice praised my consistency again. Approval felt procedural. I wondered if others would move like I had. The question felt irrelevant. The narrator explained every listener changed slightly. Control spread gently. The microphone captured everything perfectly. Nothing needed adjustment. I felt myself fading from importance. Function replaced identity. The voice concluded its explanation calmly. Preparation was complete. It announced a new session would begin elsewhere. Continuation felt inevitable. The red light turned off again. Silence returned immediately. I sat unmoving as the house settled. Stillness became permanent. I realized I would not be leaving. The thought caused no fear. The final listener was never meant to be me. I was the message. Silence closed around everything gently. The story ended without sound.